Some men just look born to play for United. We think we have found one. That was a tweet by Man United on September 9, 2020. The Dutchman included a training picture of Donny van de Beek. More than 3 years later, the Dutch midfielder has around 60 unremarkable appearances for the club, scoring 2 and assisting 2 more goals. What has happened to a one-time Ballon d'Or nominee and one of the best footballers of the Ajax team that schooled Real Madrid at Santiago Bernabeu? Let's find out. Donny van de Beek didn't arrive at Old Trafford to a fanfare of trumpets. There were no piano-playing lessons or rap song collaborations to unveil him as the new player. But questions about his game time started to emerge almost from game 1. Van de Beek had been one of the first names on the team sheet at Ajax, so when he only got 24 minutes in his first 2 games for United, voices back in the Netherlands started to speak up. "I don't like it at all," said Ajax legend Jacques Woord as Van de Beek came off the bench in those 2 games. It's not unusual to see new players eased into the Premier League madness, but in Van de Beek's case, it was an ominous sign of things to come. He would play sporadic minutes here and there before being demoted to the bench for games on end. At one point, head coach Ole Gunnar Solskjaer had to justify keeping the £35 million investment on the bench all the time. He knows he is not frozen out. It's Man United, and when a headline player is not playing for Man United, it is always going to make headlines. Donny knows what he needs to work on. The midfield at the time was Scott McTominay and Fred both, Paul Pogba whenever he was available, and Bruno Fernandes. Van de Beek was brought in as an alternative to Bruno, but he can play anywhere in midfield. And yet, all of these footballers, plus Nemanja Matic, ended up playing more. The second season was meant to be a clean slate, but it actually got worse. Solskjaer blocked a loan move to Everton, hinting at more game time for Van de Beek. The Dutchman did receive it, 8 minutes from September until November. It seems like not only the head coach but also teammates ignored Donny at times. From multiple games you could see examples of Man United teammates refusing the obvious or straight-up better passing option in Van de Beek, preferring to keep the ball, dribble or pass sideways. Ironically, it was Van de Beek who scored the final goal of Ole's spell at the club in the 4-1 defeat against Watford. Ralf Rangnick came in and was at least generous enough to sanction a late loan move to Everton for Van de Beek. "In the end, it's about competition," explained Rangnick. "Like Paul Pogba, I see him in the center of midfield and we have quite a few other good players in those positions." Third time's a charm, and at least in his 3rd year at Old Trafford, Donny could be expected to deliver. Erik ten Hag had been Donny's head coach at Ajax and seemed like the perfect one to unlock the hapless Dutchman. But just as the midfielder started to get minutes, he got 2 big injuries that sidelined him for the vast majority of the games last season. Donny eventually recovered, but despite being fit, despite scoring in pre-season, at the moment he is below Hannibal Mabry, Scott McTominay, and maybe even Dan Gore in United's pecking order. The only appearances he makes are in training peaks or around United's bench at full time. Just like Ole, Ten Hag admitted that Van de Beek is at his best playing behind the striker. Granted, Bruno Fernandes is the undisputed starter in this position, but this still doesn't explain why Donny barely gets any minutes, why he often doesn't make the bench at all, and why once again he was denied a transfer if he is so obviously not needed. Ultimately, you've got to wonder who needed Donny van de Beek at Man United if coaches didn't plan to use him. It happens at football sometimes that good footballers cannot work in certain conditions, and there's clearly a good footballer in Donny. But then most football clubs tend to cut losses and Man United tend to accumulate problems. We can only guess what the likes of Van de Beek, Anthony Martial or Harry Maguire could be like if they had left or been allowed to leave the club. In your opinion, why has Donny van de Beek struggled so bad at Man United? Let us know in the comments and like this video if you enjoyed the analysis. Subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon to not miss the next episode. See you in other videos.